So with each new WoW expansion, and Dragonflight is no exception, the game usually introduces some one-time ways to make gold, and this is one time per character, which are super efficient, whether it be from treasures, or battle pets, or even mounts, or profession tricks, etc. And so in today's video, I'm going to be sharing all these new one-time gold making methods that you can do per character, and this is especially since Dragonflight makes it so accessible for alts, even fresh level 60s, with access to the full talent tree of dragon riding as well as a lot of the content on the Dragon Isles. And with that, let's get into part 1, which will cover treasures, which of course you can pick up once per character. Starting with the Elevant Canvas Brush right in Thaldraszus, at these following coordinates right under Algathar Academy. So all you need to do is fly over here, and this is extremely easy to access by alts, assuming you've already unlocked your maximum or close to maximum dragon riding talents on just one character. You can unlock across all of your characters, right? Plus, with any level 60 or maybe even earlier, you can actually go to your capital city to teleport right to Valdrakken and just fly over this short distance. And once you reach the landing here, it's not quite on the highest tier of the academy, but I think the next one down. But anyhow, right at these coordinates, you'll be able to pick up this, again, treasure called the Elegant Canvas Brush, which is a trash item, but notably sells for over 2,000 gold. So this is an easy, extremely easy, I would say, 2,000 gold that you can knock out with each of your characters entering into Dragonflight. And next, I thought I'd mention another quick and easy treasure to pick up, although this one isn't directly contributing to any gold gains, but it's very useful for, professions and gold making nonetheless, and that's the Misty Treasure Chest, which is actually a treasure that will give you a 34 slot bag for free, of course. And this is one of the bigger sized bags that you can get. And all you need to do is go to these coordinates here in the Waking Shore, and then fly under or into this waterfall here to pick up this Misty Treasure Chest to get your 34 slaughter. And next up, there are also a series of new pet treasures that you can pick up around the Dragon Isles. And while pets are typically not necessarily the fastest sellers, I found that especially with newer pets, like those that are newly introduced in Dragonflight, you'll usually be able to sell them for not only more gold, but also sell them out a bit faster for those people who have yet to collect them, right, compared to older pets. Anyhow, the first of these is the Roseate Hopper, which is guarded by this possessive hornswogg here, as you might have seen during your travels on the Dragon Isles. But you usually have to solve a riddle to be able to get past this bullfrog here. However, there's an easy way to get through it, which is to basically commit suicide or jump off a ledge or off your dragon around the cave that he's guarding, and basically walk your spirit into that cave to revive yourself to pick up the treasure. This is actually going to be a lot easier and a lot less time consuming to get this treasure. And what I recommend is to not just dismount on your dragon to sort of aim to fall close to the cave, because it's a lot easier to miss if you do it this way with the momentum you have with dragon riding. So what I suggest instead is, by the way, you want to first strip off your gear if you want to save some additional gold from repairs. And after you do that, I actually just suggest you fly to the sort of mountaintop or hilltop right above the frog and just jump off from there, right? That's a much more surefire way to basically kill yourself to get the pet. And of course, once you die and run your spirit into the cave, go ahead and just revive and collect your Roseate Hopper pet. And as with many other pets, when you first pick up the item, it'll be bite on pickup, but once you learn it into your pet journal, you'll be able to cage it. Not every pet is cageable, by the way, like some from quests, but in fact many are. So you can actually cage this one, the Roseate Hopper, and sell it on the auction house. And speaking of which, another thing that you can do, and this is especially useful for players who have been playing for a while, is that you can actually go through your pet journal to see which pets that you might not need necessarily to want to sell in the auction house, or even if you have duplicate pets, right, that you can just have one of and sell the other. One very useful website for doing this actually is wow-pets.com, on which you can actually search up your character on a given realm to see which types of pets it has, as well as the value of those pets, and even which duplicate pets that character has that you can also cage and sell. But anyhow, most of these Dragonflight pets coming from these treasures should get you a few thousand gold at least, and also sell relatively quickly, especially compared to older expansion pets. And for the next treasure and pet on this list, and this one is likely the most valuable one currently, and that is the Viridescent Duck. Getting this pet involves a couple of very easy steps, the first of which being heading over to the Onaran Plains and going over to Marukai, the sort of capital city or town or encampment of the Maruk Centaur. And in there you want to talk to this dog, or interact rather with this dog here called Ludo, who will give you a map, sort of a treasure map if you will, which will point you to a dirt mound on your map. It'll actually mark it on your world map, so you can press M to see where the treasure is, and all you need to do is to fly over to the dirt mound nearby, click on it, and you'll receive an egg that will then hatch into your duck in 3 days, after which of course naturally you can learn the pet, cage the pet, and sell it if you like. Now for just a bit of reference, this pet is currently selling for about 19,000 on my realm as of the recording of this video, which I believe has gone a bit lower since I tried selling it a couple of days ago after my egg hatched, so I think it's about 15 to 16,000, but this is just on my realm, and of course this could vary depending on your realm as well. Moving on, this time in the Azure Span, you'll be able to find the Black Feather Nester by flying up into this log here, this open tree, and clicking on the sort of honey thingy in the back of the tree, as you can see right here. And once you click on the tree sap rather, use the tree sap to go over to the top of the open part of the tree and click on this little highlighted branch here, and just wait a few seconds and the bird will come right over and you'll be able to interact with it to collect your pet. It's as simple as that. And in terms of value, this pet is worth roughly 6,000 gold on my realm as of now. And next up, for another super easy and also cute pet that you can collect, this time in Thaldraszus, we've got Chestnut, where all you need to do is to fly over to this location on Thaldraszus. I'll show the map in a bit, but essentially here you'll find some acorns on the ground that you can click on and interact with. You won't see them on my screen here because I already collected the pet, but anyhow, it's pretty easy to spot. Collect the acorns and then just click on the so-called acorn harvester here, which is this little buddy squirrel here, to get your chestnut pet. Now in terms of value, it says here on my Trade Skill Master add-on that the region market value is about 11,000 gold. However, on my server, and this is an example of how these prices can greatly vary, it's only worth about, or selling for recently, about 2,500 gold. However, in my opinion, that's still a decent amount for how easy it is to get this pet and also how unique it actually looks, meaning that it should theoretically be a bit easier to sell compared to a lot of other pets. Now for the next set of treasures and methods, these aren't necessarily ones that you can quickly knock out on your characters unlike the previous ones, but I thought I'd definitely mention them anyway because they can be very lucrative. And this is something that you probably want to do on at least one of your characters, like your main anyway, which is digging up the treasures, namely the Disturbed Dirt, as well as the Explorer's Packs from the Dragon Scale Expedition faction. So by unlocking, I think rank 2 and then rank 5 respectively, you'll unlock the account-wide ability to collect these treasures around the Dragon Isles, with the Disturbed Dirt being more valuable than the Explorer's Packs in general, which also has a chance of containing useful items, not only vendor trash, but also things like profession knowledge points, or items that grant those points, which are useful for, gold making as well, obviously. And then it can also drop things like BOE, transmog appearances, which to my knowledge isn't worth too much. But you also have a chance of dropping, and this is the first item I want to highlight from these treasures, the item called a Guide to Rare Fish, which also marks your map with a treasure, which is the pet that we're going to be getting in the Waking Shores. So as you can see here, learning this item or clicking on this item has allowed me to see this marked treasure on my map for the Azure Frillfish pet. And once you arrive at this location marked on your map, you'll then go and interact with this fragrant plant here to then be able to interact with the frillfish, which will be swimming in the water nearby, and will allow you to collect your pet that way. Now on my realm, these frillfish are going for about 11,000 gold, and this should stay pretty high for the most part because again, getting this map from the dirt mounds can be a bit more uncommon. But that's just one of the reasons that you should just keep digging at these dirt mounds when you come across them. Again, not only for the other benefits, really good benefits like profession knowledge, but also to have a chance at getting these one-time treasures. And as a bit of a bonus specifically for Jewelcrafters, you can actually unlock the ability to craft a series of pets after reaching renown level 21 with the Dragon Scale Expedition, these jeweled whelpling pets. One of them, the Onyx version, is actually a guaranteed one that you can get from purchasing a quest item to start the quest line from one of the reputation vendors, and the rest you can collect from random treasures, again by gathering magic bound chests, disturbed dirt, and or explorers packs. Next, on to part 2, I'm going to cover all of the one-time per character profession perks that you can pick up to greatly improve your profession knowledge to allow you to make more gold, as well as some key recipes and easily accessible recipes that your characters can easily utilize to supplement your gold income. And with that, the first of these is one-time profession knowledge across most professions. And these actually include not just treasures that are items that you can pick up to give you profession knowledge for once per character, per profession that is, but also there are profession NPCs or so-called profession masters that if you talk to them will also give you profession knowledge as well. And this actually also covers mining and herbalism if you have many characters with those, as those don't technically have specific treasures that you can get for profession knowledge, but there are the professional masters that you can talk to. And also another important quest line for each of the characters with professions that you want to work on to unlock is the Dragon Shards of Knowledge NPC, right? Which will allow you to turn in these Dragon Shards of Knowledge that drop randomly to gain additional profession knowledge. And to start the quest line to unlock Dragon Shards of Knowledge on each character, you want to head over to the Fork River Crossing over in the Anaran Plains right here. But also to unlock the additional, or to complete the quest line rather, you'll have to also complete the first quest, just the first quest, in the To the Azure Span quest line. So it's just that quest, right? To the Azure Span, which has you going over to the Azure Span, talking to one NPC, and then you can actually just return over to the Anaran Plains right here to the Fork River Crossing to continue your Dragon Shards of Knowledge quest line. And lastly, I'll cover profession specs and recommendations for especially if you want to set up some alts for some easy gold making supplementation, starting with alchemy here. So mainly, especially on an alt, I recommend doing transmutation. So as you can see here, I have transmutation maxed out. And after that, you can actually also, and I haven't done so here in this video clip just yet, but go into decayology because this will unlock yet another transmute. And after this, I personally like speccing into alchemical synthesis here. Or chemical synthesis rather, because it not only gives you multi-craft and further thus increasing the efficiency of your transmutes, but also it allows you to gain skill with reagents and incenses if you want to go into the incense crafting route, right? Especially if you want to expand upon your alchemy crafting repertoire later on, as incenses can be really helpful for crafters all around. Now next up, I've actually bunched together blacksmithing, leatherworking, tailoring, as well as part of Inscription and Jewelcrafting into one sort of group, because my strategy for all these professions are pretty similar, save for a bit of Inscription and Jewelcrafting having other options as well. But mainly for all these armor crafting professions, first of all, my recommendation is, especially with an alt, right, or like a fresh new level 60, is to pick up the Crimson Combatants recipes for that specific profession. And all these aforementioned 5 professions have these PvP green recipes that you can learn, and most of these are fairly cheap as well, and are still selling quite quickly, at least in my experience and on my realm. And as for profession specializations, for blacksmithing, leatherworking, and tailoring, and also Inscription as well, but I'll touch on Inscription a bit more later on, my recommendation is to spec into the Master Tree, which is the one that gives you plus skill overall, enough that you can craft these Crimson Combatants green gear at maximum quality with the relatively cheap reagents. I think nowadays the highest level, or highest rank rather, PvP reagents, the Infurious cloth or leather or scales for mail, you can get rank 3 for as cheap as the rank 2s or rank 1s, right? So you don't really have to worry about procuring higher level or more expensive ingredients that way, or reagents that way. and thus you should be able to get away with not having that much plus skill, right? So first of all, by power leveling your profession to whatever level you can get to with trainer learned recipes, plus a lot of the general plus skill from the master tree, you should have be able to rather achieve crafting max rank Crimson Combatant's gear with the cheapest items that you can find on the auction house, with relatively few profession knowledge points, that is. Which is to say that you should be able to set this up pretty easily, even on a fresh level 60, just setting foot in the Dragon Isles and not having done any of the weekly quests for profession knowledge or anything like that. And if you do need a few extra points, you can still go and seek out the one-time treasures as well as Profession Master, which will give you anywhere from a dozen or more profession knowledge points to even about 20 or so. So definitely knock those out once per character, because those are a very efficient way to get profession knowledge. And if you want to progress further beyond PvP gear, a good general rule of thumb is, and something that you usually can't go wrong with, is to spec into resourcefulness on your, again, general tab or tree in your profession tree, because that'll make just your crafts a lot more efficient, right? And will also benefit anything else you might be crafting as well, especially if you're, say, a scribe, which involves churning through a lot of reagents and milling and stuff. Having a lot of resourcefulness can be very useful too. And for any of these professions, if you want to expand further into crafting different things outside of just PvP gear, I recommend not really focusing on crafting orders, especially if you haven't been keeping up with profession knowledge from the start of Dragonflight. It'll be difficult to compete with the highest ranked crafters, and if you don't have connections and whatnot. So just focus on items that you can still sell in the auction house. Like for example, with Inscription, you have Vantis runes, right? If you can hit rank or the max rank with Vantis runes, you should be able to get a decent profit, especially if you also have like the milling and ink production talents to make that more efficient. You'll be able to make these, runes and have a higher margin for them. Now, another example with Jewelcrafting, you can definitely spec into gem crafting, right? Or gem cutting, because you'll be able to sell blue gems on the auction house. Here, as you can see, I've spec into fire gems. Probably not the best choice. Now, I actually, if I were to, be able to start again, I would recommend probably earth gems, but do take a look at what's, more meta in terms of what types of secondary stats people might need, and then you can spec into that one, right? But I think Earth is the one that offers the pure mastery gem, and a lot of specs will want that gem, so it's probably a good bet or first path to go for, although you can eventually unlock different types of gems and cuts as well. Now, blacksmithing, on the other hand, is extremely gear focused. So outside of your PvP gear and some of the, BOE, green, profession gear and whatnot, there's not as many opportunities for things that you can sell in the auction house, say for things like consumables. I'm not really sure how good that is to sell. Or you can just focus on like smelting, but you'll have to sink a lot of points into smelting and also the general tree to maximize your resourcefulness and the ranks of the ore that you can produce. So that will take a bit more of a point commitment. But again, you can make this more efficient by sinking points into the generalist tree, which will allow you to craft the combatant's gear at the highest rank, and then spec the rest of your points into things like resourcefulness and then multi-crafting for your smelting. Now, leatherworking, on the other hand, again, besides the PvP gear, also offers things like item enhancements while crafting them, which are consumable items that you can sell on the auction house. So you can potentially spec into something like this, again, put a lot of points in the generalist tree, and then things like curing and tanning to improve your reagent crafting, and then also into primordial leatherworking for like the specific type of like armor patch or whatever enhancement you want to focus on. For example, the Fang adornments with the PvP or best sealed version of it. If you can craft up to rank 3 Fang adornments alongside making all the reagents you crafted for that more efficient, this could be a good profit maker as well, although it does require a decent point commitment and perhaps inspiration as well. So one thing I hadn't mentioned yet is a thing called an inspiration build, where if an item level or recipe difficulty rather is quite high, if it's say 350 to 400, sometimes you won't be able to achieve the guaranteed level of skill. Let's say here the Earth Shine scales have a 375 recipe difficulty, so things like this you might have to benefit from inspiration to guarantee the max rank, which means some people actually spec into, instead of putting the rest of their points into plus skill, they actually move those points into maxing out the inspiration part of their generalist tree to have the greatest chance of getting the max rank. On top of that, you can use instances. If you're not crafting them from alchemy, you can buy them from the auction house. For extended periods of crafting, you can use instances to make your inspiration even higher. And this not only applies to things like leatherworking potentially, but also enchanting. It's a popular strategy for enchanting, for hitting the max rank of certain enchants as well. And by the way, as for enchanting specs, you basically start by picking one type of enchant and just going all in on that, and just trying to hit as many max rank crafts or as close to max rank craft for that type of enchant, right? Which will usually require you to, if your gear isn't insane and whatnot, to spec into an inspiration build. And as for engineering, I don't think there's nearly as many profitable items that you can craft and sell, as also traditionally engineering is more focused on things like gadgets and also character perks that you can obtain. But if there's one thing that I recommend, besides all the reagents that are used to craft that item and the reagents themselves that you can sell in the auction house, like these handful of Servite bolts, the gears and coils and whatnot, there's also something called the soul inhaler that you can actually sell in the auction house. It requires a lot of different reagents, so the more efficiently you can make these reagents, the more profit you can make from it, right? And even if you just buy the materials from the auction house, you should still be able to, earn a profit from crafting and selling this item. And the cool thing about this actually is you only need a few points to be able to craft this soul inhaler just by speccing into optimized efficiency to tab here and then going over to the scrapper tree. So you just unlock enough points in the middle node to unlock your sub-spec, and then put 20 points into the scrapper tree to unlock this recipe. And there's also no rank for this, so you don't have to worry about spending additional points to skill up to match the recipe difficulty and whatnot. You just craft this one rank and be able to sell the best version of it essentially. Now, yeah, another path that you can consider, by the way, and I hadn't mentioned this earlier, and I made it sound like engineering sucks, but it can still make a lot of profit, I suppose, if you focus on things like these, again, item crafting enhancements. So like these optional reagents that you can use to make an item stats better, right? So in this case, for example, you can go over to function over form here and then spec into gears for gear. And eventually, by putting enough points in this, I think it's 10 points, you'll be able to make the magazine of healing darts optional reagent, for which you can actually obtain rank 3 of this, or be able to craft rank 3 of this, which I believe requires a substantial amount of skill. So the recipe difficulty is 425, so you likely have to go with an inspiration build for this. But once you are able to craft rank 3s fairly consistently, these are going for a few thousand gold, at least the rank 3s, right? If you can't really hit the rank 3s, you're likely gonna come out with a loss. But if you can hit rank 3s at a decent enough, proportion and rate, you will be able to, with an inspiration build, and again using instances and whatnot, and throughout a session of crafting multiple until you hit enough rank 3s, you can definitely turn a good profit from focusing on all of your points and build into crafting something like this. Also, I want to quickly touch on gathering specs. If you have especially one character like a Dragfear, right, Evoker, dedicated to gathering, and there can be different specs for this depending on your playstyle, and there, I believe, are multiple viable specs. But for me, I like going for the elemental specs for both herbalism and mining. However, of course, the first priority is to unlock being able to gather on Dragonback or wild dragon riding, right? That should probably be the first thing to unlock for any herbalist and miner. But after that, I like to go into the elemental specs because they unlock this overload ability for both herbalism and mining. They each have one, and what this does is on a cooldown you can overload with the ability any elemental node to gather additional herbs or ore and rousing elements depending on the type of elemental node that you overloaded. And this is on a cooldown, so it's great for alts, right? And similarly for skinning, you can also spec into bait crafter and then go into mastery to unlock the ability and make this more efficient. If you spec further into this, to craft this elusive creature bait, which on a cooldown allow you to lure in elite creatures that you can skin for additional rewards, which again is good for alts who you can log in and just knock this out and then log back out. And lastly, I also want to just give cooking a quick shout out, as if you're able to access certain rare recipes, like some of the ones from the Dragon Scale Expedition Renown levels, or the Faded Fortune Cookie, which you can get the recipe for, and if you unlock this once from crafting or flipping rather, the Faded Fortune cards, you can buy those on the auction house, or a much more efficient way is to spec into, reagent crafting and milling and whatnot with a scribe and craft the fortune card yourself and flip the card yourself to get the recipe, which is what I did. You'll be able to craft these Faded Fortune Cookies, especially combined with Inscription. This will be a pretty good way and efficient way to make gold as well. And that's pretty much all I wanted to share in today's video, which came out to be a lot longer than I anticipated, but that's okay because I got to share a lot about basically every profession and specs that I recommend for even fresh new characters in the Dragon Isles, and especially your alts, right? So these specs you can easily not only set up with by not only power leveling up each of these professions, additional professions through the Wowhead guides that are linked below, but also by collecting these recipes like the PvP recipes, and which happen to be fairly easy to keep track of, and you just have to craft a few, list them and then log out of your character, which can be done in a few minutes on each character, right? And thus making this a sort of easy, lazy way to make gold with even an alt army. So with that, hopefully you found this helpful. And if you did, be sure to comment down below, or or like the video, and let me know what you think. If there's anything you'd like to add, and I'll definitely reply to your comment. And with that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.